So I talked about the in clause in the last video, and I want to go back to that for a minute. So let's say I wanted to get the first 3 posts in my post table. Well, I could just say select star from post where ID equals 1 or ID equals 2 or ID equals 3. That would be one way of doing it. Another way of doing it that might be a little more effective is to do select star from post where ID in 1, 2, 3. And we get exactly the same thing. Now I bring this up because when we do these many-to-many relationships, we're often going to have sets of, or rather lists of IDs, and we're going to be using these IDs to compare against other IDs in order to draw up new subsets of our data and new relationships that are modeled within our database that we want to pull out, probably in PHP. So to better illustrate this, I'm going to start with something like getting all of the post IDs from the politics category. So let's say I say select ID from category C, where c.name like politic. I'll just put polit, doesn't really matter. Or let's say c.name equals other. So now I end up with 2 IDs, right? Now if I wanted to get the post IDs that are related to that using the in statement, it would just be a matter of saying select pc.postid from post category PC, where pc.categoryId in, and then I would select this statement here and paste it into here. And now I'm going to get the set of post IDs that's related to either the political category or the other category. Now, if I want to take this a step further, I can do a select star from post with authors, where post with authors.id in, and then hit enter, and then I can throw this query in there and hit enter. And so now I've basically gotten all of the political postings with the name and the email address and everything else just by doing a bunch of nested in where clauses and joins. Actually, there are no joins here. It's all just using where clauses. So it's very simple. This is another way of doing it as opposed to doing the left joins that we did above. So now I can take this and I can actually turn it into a view. Now, one of the things to note about the view is that if you create it, you might want to update it at a later date. So I'm going to go back up to the create view post with authors, and I'm just going to copy this into my text file. And I'm going to modify this to say create or replace view. And what this means is that either it'll create it the first time around, or it'll just replace it with whatever I've got here. And then the same thing down here. I'm going to take this select statement and I'm going to go back here. And I'm enjoying all the data that I'm getting here. It really does help to keep a file around when you're doing all of this, because you'll end up with a lot of different queries and you want to be able to easily pick them up. So again, I want to create or replace a view, and this time I'm going to call it political posts. And now we're moving away from necessarily our database representation and into something that would be closer to what our application would be looking for. So with this political posts view, I can do a select star from political posts, and I'm going to get a listing of political posts, and everything looks fine. But if I decide down the line I want to say, you know what, I need to update my email address to another one, so if I say update author set email equals john@lebensold.net, where name equals John Lebensold, and then I go back to my political posts, then automatically this view, because it's dependent on that authors table, even though it's 2 views deep, it will still be able to access that data. So while at first it might seem like a lot of headache to denormalize or to create separate tables for all of your little bits of content, at the end of the day you can still create a view that will operate much the same way that those original tables were operating. And this way you'll always have one version or one bit of data for every single row, as opposed to multiple bits of data. So with all of that in place, the last little thing I just want to mention about views is that you can also alter them dynamically, and that it's pretty straightforward. So we did this left join. Let's say I want to get rid of the email column, for example. I'll just say alter table, or alter view rather, post with authors as select, and now we're just setting a new version of that view. So I'm going to get rid of the email address and post with authors. But you're going to notice that the political posts table will probably not change. So I'm going to say a.name from post p left join author a on p.author_id equals a.id. So now I'm just getting rid of the email column in the select statement for post with authors. Now if I go back to political posts, it's going to throw an error saying that, uh-oh, something's not defined, things aren't looking good, there's problems, right? So just something to note, that if you're going to start messing around with, views that are dependent upon other views, then you need to be ready to regenerate those dependencies. So now if I go back, then everything will be fine, but you'll notice that I'm actually going to lose my email column. So the views are great, but if you're building views on top of views, then you have to be careful if you modify those base views, because they are dependent, or they create a dependency for upper views, basically. So you want to be sure that you've got everything settled before you start creating views that your application is going to use. So in the next video, we're going to shift gears again. We're going to talk a little bit about counting and grouping by. So we're going to see how we can actually start using some of the number features of MySQL to group things by author ID or by posts, get article counts, and from there we're going to even move into timestamps, and finally backup and restore, and lastly MySQL search. I'm John Lebensold, and thanks for listening.